Hello there, and welcome to Earth's history, where ancient stones whisper secrets across millennia, where human ambition carved mountains from desert sand, and where the boundary between accident and intention blurs into mystery. Tonight, we're traveling not backward through deep time, not forward into distant futures, but to a moment roughly 4,500 years ago, to a place where three massive structures rose from the Egyptian desert. Structures so precise, so monumental, so enigmatic, that they continue to puzzle and inspire us today. This is the story of the Pyramids of Giza, monuments that stand at the intersection of human achievement and cosmic coincidence, ancient engineering and mathematical mystery, history and wonder. If you've ever looked at images of the pyramids and felt a stirring, a sense that something profound was happening there, something beyond mere construction, you're touching on questions that have fascinated humanity for thousands of years. How were they built? Why were they built? And most intriguingly, why do these ancient structures seem to encode mathematical and astronomical knowledge that their builders supposedly shouldn't have possessed? Wherever you are right now, I hope you're comfortable, settled, ready to explore one of humanity's greatest mysteries. Maybe you're lying in bed as the night deepens. Maybe you're sitting quietly as stars wheel overhead. Those same stars the ancient Egyptians watched, mapped, and perhaps encoded into stone. Maybe you're in that contemplative space where the mind can wander through possibility, through questions without easy answer, through the space between what we know and what we wonder. If this journey into ancient mystery brings you peace, if it helps you see human achievement as something vast and connected to larger patterns, I'd be grateful if you'd like the video, subscribe to the channel, or share it with someone else who finds wonder in humanity's oldest monument. So settle in, let your breathing slow, like the patient accumulation of stone upon stone. Let your thoughts drift like sand across, and let's begin. Because on the Giza Plateau, just outside modern Cairo, three pyramids stand that have stood for 45 centuries, outlasting empires and civilization, weathering time itself, holding within their dimensions and alignments a series of coincidences so precise they seem almost impossible. Part 1. The monument themselves. Before we dive into the mystery, before we explore the mathematical anomalies and astronomical alignment, we need to understand what we're looking at. The Giza Pyramid Complex consists of three main pyramids, several smaller subsidiary pyramids, the Great Sphinx, and various temples and causeways. But it's the three main pyramids that dominate the landscape and the imagination. The Great Pyramid of Khufu, the Pyramid of Khafre, and the Pyramid of Menkaure. The Great Pyramid, also known as the Pyramid of Khufu or Cheops, is the largest and oldest. It was built around 2580-2560 BCE during the 4th dynasty of Egypt's Old Kingdom. For nearly 4,000 years, it was the tallest human-made structure on Earth, rising originally to 146.5 meters, though it now stands at 138.8 meters after losing its outer casing stones and capstone. It's composed of approximately 2.3 million limestone blocks, each weighing between 2 and 80 tons, with some granite blocks in the interior chambers weighing up to 80 tons. The pyramid covers an area of 13 acres, roughly 230 meters on each side of its base. Its base is almost perfectly square, with sides aligned to the cardinal direction, north, south, east, and west, with an accuracy of better than 1/10 of a degree. This precision, achieved without compasses, without modern surveying equipment, without any of the technology we take for granted, is in itself remarkable. Inside, the Great Pyramid contains passages and chambers. The descending passage, which slopes down into the bedrock. The ascending passage, which leads upward. The Grand Gallery, a corbelled passage, with a ceiling rising in steps to nearly 9 meters high. The King's Chamber, constructed of granite block and containing a granite sarcophagus, and the Queen's Chamber, misnamed as it probably never held a queen, located lower in the structure. The pyramid's exterior was originally covered in white limestone casings polished to a brilliant shine that would have made the structure gleam in the desert sun, visible for miles. Most of these casing stones were removed over the century, used in other construction projects, particularly in medieval Cairo, but a few remain at the base, showing the precision of their fitting, joints so tight that even today you can barely slide a piece of paper between them. The Pyramid of Khafre, the second pyramid, appears taller than the Great Pyramid from certain angles because it sits on higher ground and retains some of its limestone casing at its apex. It was built around 2570 BCE for Khafre, Khufu's son. It's slightly smaller than the Great Pyramid, originally 143.5 meters tall, but it's still enormous, still a testament to the ambition and capability of its builders. The Pyramid of Menkaure, the third and smallest of the three, was built around 2510 BCE. It's roughly a tenth the volume of the Great Pyramid, rising originally to 65 meters, but smallest is relative. It's still a massive structure, still built with precision, still aligned to the cardinal direction with remarkable accuracy. Together, these three pyramids dominate the Giza Plateau, arranged not in a straight line, but in a subtle diagonal pattern that has itself sparked speculation and wonder. Are they randomly placed? Are they positioned according to some plan we don't understand? Are they, as some researchers have suggested, arranged to mirror the stars of Orion's belt, connecting these earthly monuments to the heavens? The construction of these pyramids represents one of the greatest organizational achievements in human history. The Great Pyramid alone required quarrying, transporting, and precisely placing 2.3 million blocks over approximately 20 years. That's roughly 315 blocks per day, 13 blocks per hour, one block every 4.5 minutes, working 10 hours a day, every day, for 2 decades. The logistics are staggering. Feeding the workforce, housing them, organizing the labor, maintaining tools, coordinating the work. Traditional Egyptology tells us that these pyramids were built as tombs for pharaohs, as monuments to divine kingship, as gateways to the afterlife. The pharaoh, considered a living god, would be buried within the pyramid, surrounded by provisions and magic spells to aid his journey through the afterlife. The pyramid itself, with its perfect geometry rising to a point, symbolized the primordial mound of creation, the rays of the sun, the pharaoh's ascension to join the sun, god Ra in the sky. This explanation is supported by extensive evidence, hieroglyphic inscriptions in other pyramids describing the pharaoh's journey, funerary texts, the presence of sarcophagi, the elaborate burial rituals documented in Egyptian religion. And yet, the Great Pyramid itself contains no hieroglyphics, no decoration, no obvious burial marker. Its interior is stark, functional, precise, but unadorned. This absence has fueled speculation. Was it really just a tomb? Or was it something more? Something else? Something we don't fully understand? Part 2. The mathematical mystery. Now we enter the realm where history meets mystery, where archaeological fact encounters mathematical anomaly. The pyramids of Giza, particularly the Great Pyramid, contain within their dimensions a series of mathematical relationships that seem too precise to be accidental, too sophisticated to be coincident. Let's explore these, one by one, with care and wonder. Pi in the pyramid. The most famous mathematical feature of the Great Pyramid is its embodiment of pi, the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter, approximately 3.144159. If you take the pyramid's perimeter at its base and divide it by twice its height, you get a number very close to pi. The original height was approximately 280 royal cubits, 146.5 meters, and each side of the base was approximately 440 royal cubits, 230.4 meters. The perimeter is therefore 1,760 royal cubits. Dividing the perimeter by twice the height gives us 1,760, shall from 3.14286, which differs from pi by less than 0.05%. This could be coincidence. The ancient Egyptians might have simply been using a slope ratio they found aesthetically pleasing or structurally sound, and this ratio happened to approximate pi. Or, some researchers argue, the Egyptians deliberately incorporated pi into the design, demonstrating mathematical knowledge far beyond what conventional history attributes to them. The ancient Egyptians did understand practical mathematics. They had to build their civilization, to survey fields after the Nile, floods, to calculate taxes, to construct buildings. The Rind mathematical papyrus, dating from around 1650 BCE, shows they understood fractions, could solve linear equations, and had a value for pi of approximately 3.16, close but not exact. But the Great Pyramid was built 1,000 years before that papyrus, in an era when mathematics was supposedly less developed. Did they know pi to this precision? Did they deliberately encode it in the pyramid's dimensions? Or is this a coincidence, a byproduct of using certain slope ratios that happen to approximate pi? We don't know for certain. The pyramid cannot tell us its builder's intention, cannot explain whether this mathematical relationship was deliberate or accidental. It simply stands, embodying pi, whether by design or chance. The golden ratio. The Great Pyramid also appears to incorporate the golden ratio, phi, approximately 1.618, a number that appears throughout nature, in spiral shells, in plant growth pattern, in the proportions of the human body. Phi is defined as the ratio where a line divided into two parts has the same ratio between the whole line and the larger part as between the larger part and the smaller part. In the Great Pyramid, if you take the slope height of one face, the distance from the base to the apex along the face, and divide it by half the base, you get a number very close to phi. The slope height is approximately 356 royal cubits. Half the base is 220 royal cubits, and 356, 220, 1.0618, which is phi to 3 decimal places. Again, this could be coincidence or design. The golden ratio has been considered aesthetically pleasing throughout history. Buildings and artworks that incorporate phi often look balanced and harmonious. The ancient Egyptians might have discovered through trial and error that certain proportions looked right and those proportions happened to embody phi. Or they might have deliberately incorporated this ratio, understanding its mathematical property, the speed of light. Here's where things become truly strange, where the boundary between coincidence and impossibility begins to blur. The Great Pyramid's coordinates, its precise location on Earth's surface, encode a number that matches the speed of light in a vacuum, expressed in meters per second. The speed of light is 299,792,458 meters per second. The Great Pyramid's latitude, the distance north of the equator, is 29.9792,458 degrees north. The first 6 digits match exactly, 299.9792. The full coordinate, expressed with enough decimal places, gives you 29.9792458 degree we're in, which matches the speed of light to 8 digits. This is astonishing. The speed of light wasn't measured until 1676, when Ole Romer made the first quantitative measurement using observations of Jupiter's moon. It wasn't measured with precision until the 19th and 20th century. The meter as a unit wasn't defined until 1793, during the French Revolution, as 1/10,000,000th of the distance from the equator to the North Pole along a meridian through Paris. The ancient Egyptians couldn't have known the speed of light. They couldn't have known the meter. They couldn't have known their pyramid's latitude expressed in decimal degrees, a system invented millennia later. And yet, there it is. The pyramid sits at a latitude that, when expressed in degrees using a numbering system invented thousands of years after the pyramid was built, matches the speed of light when expressed in meters, a unit also invented thousands of years later. Is this coincidence? It must be. And yet, it's such a specific, precise coincidence that it strains credibility. Of all the latitudes where one might build a monument, what are the odds of choosing the one that would, thousands of years later, match the speed of light when coordinates and units of measurement were invented? Some respond that this is cherry picking, that if you look for numerical coincidences in any large structure, you'll find them. The pyramid has many dimensions, many ratios, many possible coordinate systems. If you look hard enough, you'll find matches to various constants. This is true, and it's worth keeping in mind. Humans are pattern-seeking creatures, and we can find patterns even in randomness. But this particular coincidence is remarkably specific. It's not a ratio derived from multiple measurement. It's not a relationship between different parts of the structure. It's the simple latitude, expressed in one particular way, matching one of the universe's fundamental constants, expressed in one particular unit. The specificity is what makes it remarkable, what makes it difficult to dismiss entirely as coincidence. Other mathematical curiosity. The Great Pyramid contains other mathematical relationships worth noting. The perimeter of the base is 1,760 royal cubits. The Earth's equatorial circumference is approximately 40,075 kilometers. The ratio between them, when expressed properly, approximates 43,200, which is the number of seconds in 12 hours, half a day. Some researchers see significance in this. The pyramid as a scale model of the Earth, encoding its dimension. The pyramid's mass is estimated at approximately 5.9 million tons. The Earth's mass is approximately 5.97 x 10 to the 24 kilogram. The ratio between them is roughly 10^18, or 1 quintillion. Again, some see significance. Others see numerology, the tendency to find meaning in numbers through selective interpretation. The interior passageways have specific angles. The descending passage slopes down at 26.5 degrees. This angle, some note, points to Alpha Draconis, also known as Thuban, which was the pole star when the pyramid was built, the star closest to the north celestial pole around 2500 BCE. The southern shaft in the king's chamber points to Orion's belt, which was associated with Osiris, the Egyptian god of the afterlife. Are these astronomical alignments deliberate? Almost certainly. The ancient Egyptians were sophisticated astronomers, tracking stars for religious and practical purposes. But some of the other claimed alignments are more speculative. The pyramid's base perimeter supposedly matches the circumference of Earth at the equator to a scale of 1/4300. Its height supposedly represents the radius of Earth to the same scale. If true, This would mean that ancient Egyptians not only knew the earth was round, which is plausible, but knew its precise dimensions, which seems unlikely with their technology. We must be careful here. Mathematics is seductive. Numbers can be manipulated, massaged, selectively interpreted to show relationships that may not be meaningful. The human mind excels at finding patterns, sometimes finding patterns that aren't really there, that emerge from our desire for meaning rather than from actual design. And yet, the precision remains, the alignment to cardinal direction within 1/10 of a degree, the smooth faces, originally within inches of true planes over hundreds of feet, the internal passages, straight and true, through millions of tons of stone, the construction joints so tight that even today, with our technology, we struggle to achieve such precision with such massive stone. Part 3, the construction mystery. How were the pyramids built? This question has occupied researchers for centuries, and despite extensive study, despite archaeological investigation, despite experimental archaeology, where researchers attempt to replicate ancient technique, we still don't have complete answers. We have theories, some more plausible than others, but genuine mysteries remain. The traditional explanation goes something like this. Egyptian workers, probably not slaves, but paid laborers or farmers working during the flood season when farming was impossible, quarried limestone blocks from local sources. They used copper tools, wooden mallet, and stone pounders to cut the block. They transported the blocks using wooden sledges, rolling them on logs, or pulling them across sand wetted with water to reduce friction. They built ramps, either straight ramps running perpendicular to one face of the pyramid, or spiral ramps wrapping around the pyramid as it rose, or internal ramps within the structure itself. These ramps allowed them to drag the blocks up to increasingly higher levels. The ramps would have been enormous structures themselves, requiring perhaps as much material as the pyramid, though they could be dismantled and the material reused. For the granite block, quarried from Aswan 800 kilometers to the south, they used boats, floating the stones down the Nile during the flood season when the river was high and extended closer to the pyramid. The final placement required precision, measuring, leveling, checking alignment, making minute adjustments to ensure each block fit perfect. This explanation is supported by evidence. We've found ancient quarries with partially cut blocks still attached to the bedrock, showing the techniques used. We've found workers' villages near the pyramid, with bakeries, breweries, sleeping quarters, evidence of a large organized workforce. We've found ancient tools, copper chisels and saws, though notably very few compared to the scale of the work, suggesting tools were precious and reused. We've found ancient texts describing work on pyramids, though frustratingly, they focus on religious significance rather than construction details. The ancient Egyptians wrote extensively about why they built pyramids, but very little about how. It's as if thousands of years from now, archaeologists find our skyscrapers, but all our written records talk about corporate profits and city planning. Nothing about steel girders and elevators and concrete. The how was too obvious to record, too mundane to mention. But here's where the mystery deepens. The Great Pyramid contains approximately 2.3 million stone blocks. The largest granite blocks in the King's Chamber weigh 80 tons. These were transported from Aswan, carved with supposedly Bronze Age tools, floated 800 kilometers, then raised to the King's Chamber, which is roughly 43 meters above the base of the pyramid. Even with ramps, even with thousands of workers, the logistics seem barely feasible with the technology we know they possess. Modern experiments have shown that yes, it's possible to move large stones with ancient technology. Yes, teams of workers can drag massive blocks on sledges. Yes, ramps can work. But the scale, the precision, the timeline, 20 years to build the Great Pyramid, requires such extraordinary organization, such precise execution, that it pushes the limits of what seems possible. Consider the interior passages, the Grand Gallery, that corbelled passageway with its precisely stacked stones forming a rising ceiling, each course slightly overhanging the one below, creates a structural arch without using a true arch. The stones are so precisely fitted that they've remained stable for 4,500 years. The passage is straight within millimeters over its entire length. How did they achieve this accuracy while building outward and upward simultaneously, while placing millions of tons of stone around and above the passageway? Consider the King's Chamber. It's constructed entirely of granite, with walls, floor, and ceiling made of massive granite blocks. Above the chamber are 5 relieving chambers, additional spaces designed to distribute the weight of the pyramid above and prevent the King's Chamber from being crushed. These relieving chambers are also made of massive granite blocks, some weighing 70-80 tons. The entire complex is built with precision that defies easy explanation with the tools we know they had. Some researchers have proposed alternative theories. Perhaps they had technology we don't know about, tools that haven't survived. Copper tools shouldn't be able to cut granite efficiently. Copper is much softer than granite, but experiments have shown that copper saws with sand abrasive can cut granite slowly, laboriously, but they can do it. Perhaps they had techniques we haven't rediscovered, lost knowledge that died with the pyramid builders. Others have proposed more exotic theories: acoustic levitation, using sound to lift stones, advanced machining, suggesting the ancient Egyptians had technology comparable to modern tools. Even extraterrestrial assistance, the ancient astronaut theory popularized by Erich von Däniken and others. These theories are not supported by mainstream archaeology, lack evidence, and require assumptions far more extraordinary than the already extraordinary idea that ancient humans, with patience and ingenuity and organization, could build these monuments. But the lack of definitive answers leaves room for speculation, for wonder, for the recognition that there are still mysteries in how these structures were created. We can explain most of it. We understand the broad strokes, but some details, some specific, particularly regarding the most precise and challenging aspects of the construction, remain unclear. Part 4. The astronomical alignment. The pyramids are aligned to the stars, and this alignment is not accidental. The ancient Egyptians were sophisticated astronomers, tracking the movements of stars and planets for both religious and practical purposes. Their calendar was based on the heliacal rising of Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky, whose appearance just before dawn heralded the annual flooding of the Nile. The Great Pyramid's faces align almost exactly with the cardinal direction: north, south, east, and west. The precision is remarkable. The base's alignment to true north is accurate to within 3/60th of a degree. This is better than the Royal Observatory at Greenwich in London, built thousands of years later with far more advanced technology. How did they achieve this? The Egyptians didn't have magnetic compasses. The magnetic compass wasn't invented until centuries later in China. They couldn't use Polaris, the North Star we use today, because due to the precession of Earth's axis, Polaris wasn't the pole star in 2500 BCE. Instead, the pole star was Thuban, Alpha Draconis, a much dimmer star. The most likely method involved astronomical observation. By tracking the movement of a star across the sky during a single night, noting where it rises and sets, one can determine true north. The circle traced by circumpolar stars around the celestial pole can be observed and its center determined. This center marks true north in the sky, and a plumb line from that point marks true north on Earth. This method requires patience, clear skies, and precise observation, but it works. It produces alignment accurate enough to explain the pyramid's orientation. That the ancient Egyptians used this or a similar method is almost certain. The precision they achieved demonstrates their astronomical sophistication, but the alignments go deeper. The southern shaft in the king's chamber, when extended, points to where Orion's belt would have been at its culmination, highest point in the sky, around 2500 BCE. Orion was associated with Osiris, god of the afterlife, and the pharaoh's soul was believed to ascend to Orion. The northern shaft points to where Thuban, the pole star, would have been visible, representing the circumpolar stars that never set, symbolizing eternity. The Pyramid of Khafra is aligned similarly. The Pyramid of Menkaure, while still aligned to cardinal directions, is offset slightly. And here's where the Orion correlation theory comes in, proposed by Robert Bauval and Adrian Gilbert in the 1990s. They noticed that the three Giza pyramids, when viewed from above, are not arranged in a straight line. The third pyramid, Menkaure's, is offset to the east. This arrangement, they argued, mirrors the arrangement of the three stars in Orion's belt: Alnitak, Alnilam, and Mintaka. The three stars are not in a perfectly straight line. Mintaka is offset slightly. The offset of the Giza pyramids matches the offset of the stars. Furthermore, the sizes of the pyramids roughly correspond to the brightness of the stars. The Great Pyramid, Khufu, corresponds to Alnitak, the brightest star. The middle pyramid, Khafre, corresponds to Alnilam. The smallest pyramid, Menkaure, corresponds to Mintaka, the dimmest of the three. Is this correlation intentional? It's plausible. The ancient Egyptians revered Orion, associated it with Osiris, oriented their monuments to stars, creating a terrestrial representation of a celestial constellation, particularly one associated with the afterlife, fits their religious worldview. Critics note that the correlation isn't perfect, that some assumptions are required to make it work, that you can find geometric patterns by chance in any collection of structures, but the correlation is striking enough that it can't be dismissed outright. At minimum, it's an interesting coincidence. At best, it's evidence of a sophisticated astronomical and symbolic program behind the Giza complex's layout. There's another alignment worth mentioning, the autumnal equinox. On the equinox, when day and night are equal length, the sun sets directly in line with the Great Sphinx and the pyramid when viewed from certain angles. The shadow cast by the pyramid at noon on the equinox points true north. These solar alignments were important in Egyptian religion, tied to Ra, the sun god, and to the cycle of death and rebirth, symbolized by the sun's daily journey across the sky. Part 5. The Age. Question conventional Egyptology dates the Great Pyramid to approximately 2560 BCE, during the reign of Pharaoh Khufu. This dating is based on several lines of evidence. Hieroglyphic inscriptions in nearby structures mentioning Khufu, carbon dating of organic materials found in the pyramid's mortar, historical records from Herodotus and other ancient historians, and the stylistic evolution of pyramid construction across Egyptian dynasties. But some researchers have questioned this dating, suggesting the pyramid, or at least some elements of the Giza complex, might be older. The most prominent proponent of this theory was John Anthony West, who pointed to weathering patterns on the Great Sphinx as evidence of water erosion, suggesting the Sphinx must be much older than conventionally thought, dating to a time when Egypt's climate was wetter, perhaps 7,000, 10,000 years ago. Geologist Robert Schoch examined the Sphinx and agreed that the weathering patterns are consistent with water erosion rather than wind and sand erosion. If true, this would place the Sphinx's construction in the early Holocene, thousands of years before the rise of ancient Egyptian civilization as we understand it. This would require a complete rewriting of history, suggesting an advanced civilization existed in prehistory, built monuments, then disappeared or declined before the emergence of the Egypt we know. This theory is controversial and not accepted by mainstream Egyptology or geology. Critics note that the weathering could be explained by other factors: underground water seeping through porous limestone, dew and humidity causing chemical weathering, or the Sphinx being carved from the Giza Plateau's bedrock, which had already been weathered before carving began. The dating of the pyramids themselves rests on firmer ground. Radiocarbon dating of organic materials, wood, and reed fragments in the mortar gives dates consistent with the Old Kingdom. Historical records, though written long after the pyramid's construction, consistently attribute them to specific pharaohs, and the evolution of pyramid design, from step pyramids to bent pyramids to true pyramids, shows a clear progression that makes sense with conventional dating. But the age question touches on something deeper: the possibility of lost civilization, of human achievements that predate recorded history, of knowledge that has been forgotten and must be rediscovered. This possibility, while unlikely given current evidence, captivates the imagination. It suggests that history is deeper, more mysterious, more filled with lost chapters than we typically assume. Part 6. Purpose and function. Were the pyramids just tombs? The conventional answer is yes, with caveats. They were tombs, but they were also much more. Religious monuments, symbols of divine kingship, focal points for mortuary cults that would continue for centuries after the pharaoh's death, demonstrations of the state's power and organizational capacity, representations of sacred geometry and cosmic order. But the Great Pyramid, unlike other pyramids, contains no inscription, no hieroglyphics, no pyramid text. The sarcophagus in the king's chamber is empty, has always been empty, as far as we know. No mummy has ever been found in the Great Pyramid. No treasure, no grave goods. This absence is strange if it was primarily a tomb. Some researchers suggest alternative purposes. Perhaps it was an astronomical observatory, with passages aligned to stars used to track celestial movement. Perhaps it was a power plant, using the pyramid's geometry and materials to generate or focus some form of energy. A fringe theory with no supporting evidence, but which captures imagination. Perhaps it was an initiation chamber for religious mystery, with the king's chamber serving as the site of rituals that transformed initiate, that provided mystical experience. Ancient accounts, particularly from Greek and Roman travelers, mention Egyptian mystery schools, initiation, secret knowledge. Perhaps the pyramid played a role in these practices. Perhaps it encoded knowledge with its dimensions and proportions, preserving mathematical and astronomical information for future generations. This would explain the mathematical constant we discussed earlier. They're not coincidences, but deliberate. Information encoded in stone that would survive longer than papyrus, longer than memory, longer than civilization itself. The truth is probably multifaceted. The pyramid served as Khufu's tomb, or was intended to, whether or not he was actually buried. It served religious and symbolic function, representing the pharaoh's divine nature, his connection to the god, his role as mediator between heaven and earth. It served political function, demonstrating the state's power, organizing labor, creating a focus for national identity. And perhaps it served functions we don't fully understand, purposes that made sense in the religious and intellectual framework of ancient Egypt, but which are opaque to us, separated by millennia and by vast cultural differences. We can't think like ancient Egyptians. We can try to reconstruct their worldview from texts and artifacts, but there are limits to our understanding, gaps that may never be filled. Part 7. The impossibility argument. There's a recurring theme in alternative theories about the pyramid, the argument from incredulity, the sense that they're simply too perfect, too precise, too monumental to have been built by ancient humans with supposedly primitive technology. This argument manifests in various forms. Aliens built them, Atlanteans built them, lost advanced civilizations built them, modern technology was somehow available in antiquity. These theories are understandable. The pyramids are extraordinary. They challenge our assumptions about what's possible without modern technology. When we imagine building something equivalent today, we think of crane and computer modeling and laser-guided equipment. The idea that ancient people with copper tools and wooden sledges and human muscle could achieve such precision seems impossible. But this intuition is misleading. It underestimates what humans can achieve with time, patience, organization, and ingenuity. It forgets that ancient people were exactly as intelligent as we are. They had the same brain, the same capacity for problem solving, the same ability to innovate. They lacked our accumulated knowledge, our technology, but they didn't lack intelligence or creativity. Modern experimental archaeology has shown that ancient construction techniques work. We've moved blocks of several tons using wooden sledges and teams of people. We've cut stone with copper tools and abrasive sand. We've built scale models of pyramids using only ancient technology. It's hard. It's slow. It requires enormous effort and organization, but it's possible. The ancient Egyptians had time. 20 years to build the Great Pyramid sounds impossible until you calculate it out. With a workforce of perhaps 20,000 to 30,000 laborers working in rotating shifts, with efficient organization, with ramps and sledges and practice and experience, you can place the required number of blocks per day. It's at the edge of feasibility, but it's feasible. They had motivation. The pharaoh was a god. Building his eternal resting place, ensuring his successful journey to the afterlife, was literally the most important work in the universe. Workers weren't forced at gunpoint, but participated in sacred labor, fulfilling religious duty, earning wages, receiving food and beer and shelter. They had knowledge accumulated over centuries. The Great Pyramid wasn't the first pyramid. It was the culmination of a long development, from mastabas, flat-roof tombs, to step pyramids like Djoser's, to the bent pyramid where they changed angle midway through construction, suggesting they learned something about structural stability, to the Red Pyramid, the first successful true pyramid, to finally the Great Pyramid, representing the perfection of the technique. The impossibility argument also ignores the imperfection. The pyramids, as amazing as they are, show evidence of human construction, variations in block size, adjustments made during construction, internal passages that don't quite align perfectly, the bent pyramid's angle chain, subsidiary pyramids that show less sophistication. They're incredible achievements, but clearly the work of humans learning, adapting, occasionally making mistakes. That said, some aspects remain difficult to explain with certainty. The precision of the stone fitting, particularly in the king's chamber's granite block, the straightness of passages over long distances, the accuracy of the base's leveling, flat within inches over a 13-acre area. These achievements push the limits of what seems possible with ancient technology, which is why they inspire both awe and speculation. Perhaps the truth is that the ancient Egyptians were more sophisticated than we give them credit for. Perhaps they had techniques that haven't survived in the archaeological record, tools made of materials that decayed, knowledge transmitted orally that died with its practitioner. The absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. Just because we haven't found something doesn't mean it didn't exist. Part 8. The cosmic connection. Let's return to that most startling coincidence, the latitude encoding the speed of light. Even if it's coincidence, even if the ancient Egyptians couldn't possibly have intended it, the fact remains. A monument built 4,500 years ago sits at a location that, when expressed in a coordinate system invented millennia later, matches a fundamental constant of the universe, expressed in units also invented millennia later. What do we make of this? Several possibilities exist, arranged roughly from most to least plausible. Pure coincidence. Of all possible latitudes, one of them has to be 29.9792458 degree N. The Great Pyramid happens to sit there. With enough structures at enough latitudes, eventually one will match some number we consider significant. This is the most scientifically conservative explanation, requiring no extraordinary assumption. Selection. Bias. We're cherry-picking after the fact. If the pyramid didn't encode the speed of light, we'd be talking about some other coincidence. This is the psychological version of the coincidence argument. Humans find patterns and assign meaning. Lost knowledge. Somehow, ancient Egyptians knew more than we think. Perhaps through observation, through careful measurement of phenomena we don't understand, they determined the speed of light and deliberately encoded it. This requires assuming capabilities far beyond what evidence suggests they possess. Universal constants, imprinted in consciousness. Perhaps certain numbers, certain ratios, certain constants resonate with something deep in human consciousness or in the structure of reality itself, and humans naturally gravitate toward them in significant construction. This is speculative, bordering on mystical, but not entirely dismissible. Intentional design by unknown civilization. Perhaps the pyramid complex was designed by a civilization more advanced than ancient Egypt, either prehistorically or by outside intervention. The ancient astronaut theory. This requires extraordinary assumption, lacks supporting evidence, and isn't necessary to explain what we observe. The scientific consensus leans heavily toward coincidence, toward the recognition that with enough structures and enough measurements, you'll find numerical matches by chance. The human tendency toward pattern seeking, toward finding meaning in numbers, has a long history and often leads us to see significance where none exists. And yet, the specificity nags. It's not just that some ratio within the pyramid approximates the speed of light. It's that the latitude itself, the simple coordinate of where the pyramid sits on Earth's surface, matches this constant so precisely. The builders chose this location for reasons we assume were practical. Proximity to Memphis, the capital, access to limestone quarries, good bedrock for foundation, visibility across the Nile Valley. But of all possible building sites, they chose the one that would, millennia later, encode this cosmic constant. Perhaps there's a middle way to think about, a perspective that acknowledges both the mathematical reality and the improbability of intention. The pyramid sits where it sits. That location has a latitude. When humans later invented the degree system of coordinates and the meter as a unit of measurement, this latitude happened to match the speed of light expressed in meters per second. This is fact, regardless of intention. The question is meaning. Does this coincidence mean anything? Does it suggest hidden knowledge, cosmic design, or simply the mathematics of probability playing out across thousands of monuments and millions of possible numerical relationships? What we can say with certainty is this: the Great Pyramid embodies mathematical and astronomical sophistication that commands respect. Whether the specific numerical coincidences are intentional or not, the overall design demonstrates knowledge, precision, and ambition that rightfully places the pyramids among humanity's greatest achievement. Part 9. The preservation through time. The pyramids have stood for 4,500 years. Think about that duration. When the pyramids were already ancient, when they were already tourist attractions for Greek and Roman visitors, when Herodotus wrote about them with a mixture of awe and misinformation, more time had passed since their construction than has passed from Herodotus to us. The pyramids are older to Julius Caesar than Julius Caesar is to us. They're older to Cleopatra than Cleopatra is to the moon landing. They've outlasted empires. Egypt itself went through multiple kingdoms and dynasties, was conquered by Persians, Greeks, Romans, Arabs, Ottomans, British. Civilizations rose and fell. Languages emerged and died. Religions were born and spread and transformed. And through it all, the pyramids stood. They've survived earthquake. Several significant earthquakes struck the region over millennia, damaging many structures, toppling obelisks, cracking temples. The pyramids shook but held. Their massive bulk, their solid construction, their carefully engineered relieving chambers distributing weight, all of these protected them from seismic damage that destroyed lesser structures. They've survived weathering. Windblown sand has abraded their surfaces for 45 centuries. Rain, though rare in Egypt, has fallen on them. Temperature swings from scorching days to cool nights have expanded and contracted the stone. Chemical weathering has worked on the limestone, and yet the core structure remains sound. The interior passages are still passable. The chambers are intact. They've survived human interference. Over centuries, the outer casing stones were stripped away, used to build medieval Cairo, used in other construction projects. The Arabs tried to break into the pyramids to find treasure, creating the passages we still use for entry today. Tomb robbers, if any treasure was ever there, took it long ago. Modern tourists, millions of, have walked through the passage, touched the walls, worn the stones smooth in place, and yet they endure. They're damaged. Certainly, the Great Pyramid is missing its capstone, its outer casing, perhaps 20 meters of height from its apex, but the essential structure is sound. The geometry is still evident. The alignments still hold. The mathematical relationships still exist in the remaining dimension. This longevity was, in part, intentional. The ancient Egyptians built for eternity. They believed the pharaoh would need his tomb forever, that the mortuary cult would continue forever, that the monument should stand as long as the stars wheeled overhead. They built accordingly, using stone rather than mud brick, using massive blocks rather than small ones, engineering structures that would resist time itself. But there's also something profound in the pyramid's form. A pyramid is inherently stable. Its broad base and tapering shape mean that gravity pulls the structure into itself rather than pulling it apart. The weight of upper block presses down on lower block, creating compression but not tension, and stone is extraordinarily strong in compression. The shape naturally sheds wind, presents minimal resistance to forces that would topple other structures. The pyramid form has been discovered independently by multiple civilizations: Egyptians, Mesopotamians, Mesoamericans. This is not because of cultural contact, but because the pyramid is a natural solution to the problem of building tall structures with stone. It's stable, scalable, achievable, with primitive technology. It's the shape you arrive at when you want to build high with heavy materials. But the Egyptian pyramids, particularly at Giza, represent the perfection of this form. They're not step pyramids like the Mesopotamian ziggurat or like some earlier Egyptian attempt. They're true pyramids with smooth faces, perfect geometry, precise orientation. They represent the culmination of engineering knowledge, the point where ambition, capability, and vision aligned to create something that has, quite literally, stood the test of time. Part X. The human element, behind all the mathematics, behind the astronomical alignment, behind the mysteries and coincidence, there were people, real human beings, who conceived of these monuments, who organized their construction, who moved the stone, who carved the passages, who placed each block with care. The workers who built the Great Pyramid were not slaves. This is a common misconception, perpetuated by Hollywood and by Herodotus's ancient account. But archaeological evidence tells a different story. The workers' villages near the pyramids show evidence of skilled laborers, paid workers, farmers fulfilling labor obligations during the Nile flood season when farming was impossible. These workers received wages, food ration, bread and beer in quantities sufficient to sustain heavy labor. They lived in barracks with organized sleeping areas. They had access to medical care. Archaeologists have found skeletons showing healed fractures, evidence that injured workers were treated and cared for until they recovered rather than being discarded. They were organized into crews with names: the Friends of Khufu crew, the Drunkards of Menkaure crew, suggesting camaraderie, identity, pride in their work. Graffiti found in internal chambers, hidden from view after construction, show these crew names, show pride in accomplishment. These weren't slaves toiling under the whip, but skilled workers participating in the greatest project of their civilization. The architects and engineers who designed the pyramids were geniuses by any measure. They understood geometry, understood structural engineering, understood surveying and leveling and alignment. They solved problems we still struggle to explain. How to move 80-ton blocks, how to maintain straight passages through millions of tons of stone, how to create relieving chambers that have kept the king's chamber intact for 4,500 years. These individuals' names are mostly lost to us. We know Imhotep, who designed the step pyramid of Djoser a century before the Great Pyramid, because he was later deified, worshipped as a god of wisdom and medicine. But the architect of the Great Pyramid, if there was one chief architect, is unknown. Their work survives, but their name does not. A reminder that even the greatest human achievements can outlast memory. The pharaohs who commissioned these monuments were products of their time, their culture, their belief system. Khufu, known as Cheops in Greek, reigned for about 23 years. He inherited a stable, prosperous kingdom from his father Sneferu, who had already built multiple pyramids, perfecting the techniques Khufu would use. Khufu devoted enormous resources to his pyramid, perhaps more than was wise. Some historians suggest the pyramid's construction strained Egypt's economy, that later pharaohs built smaller pyramids, partly because they couldn't afford or couldn't justify such massive expenditure. Was Khufu a tyrant who forced his people to build his tomb? The evidence suggests not, but we can't know for certain. The historical records we have are sparse, biased, written by the elite. We hear the pharaoh's voice, the priest's voice, but the workers are mostly silent. Their bones tell stories of hard labor, of injury, of decent nutrition, of medical care. But they don't tell us what the workers thought, what they felt about the pyramid rising behind them, whether they viewed it with pride or resentment, or simple acceptance of the order of things. What we can say is that these were people like us, with the same range of human emotion, the same capacity for vision and pettiness, for courage and fear, for love and hate. They lived in a different world, with different beliefs, different values, different technology, but they were fundamentally human. They looked at the sky and wondered. They took pride in their work. They worried about their family. They told jokes and sang songs and found meaning in their lives, and they built something that has outlasted their civilization, their language, their religion, their very name. The pyramids stand as testament not to any individual, but to collective human capability, to what we can achieve when we organize, when we persist, when we pour our time and energy and skill into creating something meant to last forever. Part E. Modern investigation. The study of the pyramids continues. Modern technology has allowed investigations impossible in earlier eras. Ground-penetrating radar can see into the pyramid without drilling or digging. Muon detectors, using cosmic ray particles that penetrate stone, can create images of internal void, revealing chambers and passages not visible from outside. In 2017, such Muon detector revealed a large void above the Grand Gallery in the Great Pyramid, a space at least 30 meters long. Its purpose is unknown. It might be a relieving chamber designed to distribute weight. It might be a sealed chamber containing something. We don't know because it's inaccessible without damaging the pyramid, which no one wants to do. So the void remains. One more mystery, one more hidden space within the world's most investigated monument. Laser scanning has created precise 3D models of the pyramid's exteriors and accessible interior. These scans show features invisible to the eye, subtle irregularity, evidence of how the construction progressed, wear patterns from millions of visitors, the effects of weathering and earthquake. They provide data future researchers can analyze without visiting the site, preserving information even as the physical structures continue to weather. Chemical analysis of the stone has revealed where they came from, confirming that most of the limestone came from local quarries, but some specialty stones came from farther away. Organic material in the mortar has been radiocarbon dated, providing independent confirmation of the pyramid's age. These analyses have strengthened conventional chronology, making alternative dating schemes less tenable. But each new investigation also raises new questions. The void detected by muon imaging. What is it? Why is it there? Does it contain anything? The microgravity surveys that suggest additional small voids or passages, are they construction features or do they lead somewhere? The erosion patterns on the Sphinx that sparked the age controversy, what caused them really? Water, wind, chemistry, or something else? Egyptology is not a dead field. New discoveries happen regularly, not just at Giza, but throughout Egypt. Tombs are uncovered, texts are translated, new radiocarbon dates refine chronology. DNA analysis of mummies reveals family relationship, migration patterns, health conditions. Our understanding of ancient Egypt improves every year, becomes more nuanced, more detailed, more accurate, and yet the core mysteries remain. How exactly were the blocks moved? We have theories, but not certainty. Why does the Great Pyramid lack Inscriptions when other pyramids are covered in hieroglyphics? We have hypotheses, but not definitive answers. What was the pyramid's full symbolic and religious significance? We can reconstruct some of it from related texts and beliefs, but we're missing context, missing the experiential dimension, missing what it felt like to live in that world, to believe those beliefs. Part 2 theme, the universal fascination. Why do the pyramids captivate us? Why, 4,500 years later, do millions of people visit them? Why do they inspire books and documentaries and theories ranging from scholarly to wildly speculative? What is it about these monuments that speaks to something deep in human consciousness? Part of it is scale. The pyramids are big in ways that overwhelm human comprehension. Standing at the base of the Great Pyramid, looking up, you feel small. The blocks tower above you, receding upward at a precise angle, face after face, of massive stone rising higher than any other human structure would rise for nearly 4,000 years. Size impresses us, makes us feel the power required to create such things, makes us respect the ambition required to imagine them. Part of it is age. The pyramids are old, older than most things we encounter in daily life. Most buildings, most institutions, most political entities are measured in decades or centuries. The pyramids are measured in millennia. They connect us to the deep past, to humans so ancient they might as well be from another world. And yet, who are enough like us to build monuments we still recognize as great? Part of it is precision, the alignment to cardinal direction, the fitting of stones, the accuracy of angles and dimension. These speak to human capability, to our ability to envision perfection and approximate it in stone. In an era before computers, before precision instruments, before any of the tools we rely on, humans created these near-perfect forms. That capability commands respect. Part of it is mystery. Despite decades of archaeological investigation, despite ground-penetrating radar and laser scanning and chemical analysis, we don't know everything. There are still questions, still debates, still possibilities, and humans love mystery, love puzzles, love the sense that there's more to discover, more to understand. But perhaps the deepest reason is symbolic. The pyramids represent human transcendence, our attempt to reach beyond ourselves, to create something permanent in a world of change, to touch eternity. They're religious monuments, yes, built for pharaohs believed to be God, but they're also profoundly human monuments. They say, we were here, we built this, we mattered, we will be remembered. Every civilization builds monuments, creates structures meant to outlast their creators. We build cathedrals and skyscrapers and memorials. We carve faces into mountains and etch names into walls. We write books and compose music and create art. All attempts to leave something behind, to extend our existence beyond our brief lives, to connect with future generations. The pyramids succeed at this in ways few other monuments do. They've outlasted the civilization that built them. The ancient Egyptian religion is dead. Its gods no longer worshipped. Its rituals no longer performed. The pharaohs are dust. The language is dead, readable only by scholars. The entire culture has been transformed beyond recognition by invasions, conversions, modernization. But the pyramids remain, and they will remain for thousands of years more. Eventually, they'll erode. Eventually, given enough time, wind and rain will wear them down, will return them to sand and stone. But that process will take many more millennia. For now, and for the foreseeable future, they stand, a connection between the ancient past and the distant future, between human ambition and human accomplishment. Part 3, the unsolved riddles. Let's gather the threads, the mysteries we've touched on, the questions that remain open despite extensive investigation, the speed of light, coordinate, coincidence or encoded knowledge. We've explored both possibilities. The scientific consensus says coincidence, but the precision is remarkable enough to warrant continued wonder. The mathematical constant, pi and phi in the pyramid's dimension. Intentional encoding or byproduct of aesthetically pleasing ratios. We don't know the builder's intention, only that the relationships exist. The construction method. We understand the broad strokes, but not all the details. How were 80-ton granite blocks raised to the king's chamber? How was such precision achieved throughout? We have theories, some tested experimentally, but gaps remain. The stellar alignment, the passages pointing to Orion and to the pole star are almost certainly intentional. The arrangement of the three pyramids mirroring Orion's belt is plausible, but debated. The full astronomical program, if there was one, remains partially obscure. The internal void. The void detected above the Grand Gallery is unexplored. Are there other hidden chambers? The pyramid might hold secrets we haven't discovered, spaces we haven't accessed. The purpose? Tomb, certainly, or intended as such. But was that the only purpose? Did the pyramid serve other functions, ritual, astronomical, symbolic, that we don't fully understand? The missing inscription. Why does the Great Pyramid lack the pyramid texts found in other pyramids? Was it because of its early date, before such texts became standard? Or is there another reason? The precision. How was such accuracy achieved without modern tools? We can replicate the techniques, but the scale and speed of the original construction still push the boundaries of what seems possible with Bronze Age technology. The knowledge base. How much did the ancient Egyptians know about mathematics, astronomy, geography? More than we often give them credit for, clearly, but how much more? These questions don't have easy answers. Some may never be answered. Definitively, the pyramid cannot speak, cannot explain itself, cannot confirm or deny our theories. We're left interpreting evidence, making inferences, constructing hypotheses that fit the facts as we know them. And perhaps that's appropriate. Perhaps monuments like the pyramids should retain mystery, should remain partially inexplicable, should continue to inspire wonder and speculation. Complete understanding might diminish them, might reduce them from cosmic mysteries to merely impressive engineering projects. The unknown, the uncertain, the mysterious. These keep us engaged, keep us questioning, keep us returning to the pyramids, generation after generation. Part 14th, the human legacy. In the end, the pyramids are about us, about humanity, about what we can achieve when we dream large, when we organize, when we persist, when we pour our collective will into creating something meant to last forever. They were built by people who have been dead for 4,500 years, people whose names are mostly forgotten, whose individual lives are lost to history, but their work remains. Every person who contributed, from the pharaoh who commissioned the project, to the architect who designed it, to the workers who moved the stones, to the craftsmen who carved the passages, left a mark on the world that endured. This is the true legacy of the pyramid, more important than any numerical coincidences or astronomical alignment. They prove that humans can create permanent, can leave marks that outlast civilization, can touch eternity in stone, if not in flesh. We, living now in the 21st century, are as distant from the pyramid builders as they were from the first humans to leave Africa, to spread across the world, to begin the long journey towards civilization. And yet, we can stand before their work and understand, at least partially, what they were attempting. We can feel the same ambition, the same desire to create, to build, to leave something behind. The pyramids speak across millennia, a message from the deep past to anyone who will listen. They say, we were here. We dreamed large. We built something meant to last forever. We succeeded. And that message resonates because we, too, dream of permanent, of leaving marks that matter, of creating things that will outlast. We write and build and create and hope that something we do will echo into the future, will touch people we'll never meet, will connect us to the unfolding story of humanity. The pyramids have done this. They've lasted. They've become symbols not just of ancient Egypt, but of human capability, of ambition realized in stone, of the desire to reach beyond ourselves, to touch something eternal. Closing, the eternal mystery. As we come to the end of this journey, through the mysteries and marvels of the pyramids of Giza, as the questions and wonders settle like dust on ancient stone, let's return to where we began, standing before these monuments, feeling small before their bulk, looking up at angles that have held for 45 centuries, contemplating what they mean and how they came to be. The pyramids are many things. They're tombs, monuments, religious symbols, astronomical alignments, mathematical puzzles, engineering marvels, tourist attraction, national symbols. They're mysteries that may never be fully solved, questions that continue to inspire investigation, anomalies that challenge our assumptions about the capabilities of ancient peoples. But most fundamentally, they're human. They're the work of people like us, people with the same brain, the same capacity for vision and ambition, the same desire to create something meaningful, something lasting, something that would speak to the future. Whether the mathematical constants in their dimensions are intentional or coincidental, whether they encode secret knowledge or simply reflect aesthetic choices, whether they represent lost wisdom or simply patient craftsmanship, the pyramids stand as testament to what humans can achieve. They've outlasted empire. They've survived millennia. They've maintained their essential form despite weathering and earthquakes and human interference. And they continue to inspire, to puzzle, to challenge us. Every generation discovers something new, asks new questions, brings new tools and new perspectives to their investigation. The pyramids have been studied for thousands of years and will be studied for thousands more. They're inexhaustible, endlessly fascinating, eternally mysterious. So as you drift towards sleep, as your thoughts slow and soften, as the boundaries between waking and dreaming blur. Imagine those pyramids standing in the desert night, under stars that wheel overhead as they've wheeled for billions of years. Imagine the stone, warm from the day's sun, slowly cooling in the darkness. Imagine the wind across the Giza Plateau, the same wind that's blown for millennia, carrying sand, wearing stone. Witness to the slow, patient passage of time. You're connected to those pyramids, connected to their builder, connected through the unbroken chain of human civilization, human curiosity, human ambition. The same stars they watch, you watch. The same questions they pondered about eternity and meaning and the proper relationship between humans and cosmos, you ponder. You're part of the same story, the same long conversation humanity has been having with itself about what matters, about what lasts, about what we should build and create and leave behind. The pyramids will stand long after we're gone, just as they've stood long after their builders departed. They'll continue speaking their silent message across time, reminding future generations that humans once dreamed large, built monumentally, reached for eternity in stone. Sleep well, child of the modern world, heir to ancient wisdom and ancient ambition. Dream of perfect angles and patient labor, of stars aligning with stone, of mysteries that connect Earth to cosmos, of human hands creating permanence in a world of change. And know that you too are part of the continuing story. That what you create, what you build, what you leave behind matters, echoes, connects to the long arc of human becoming. From all of us at Earth's history, thank you for joining this journey into ancient mystery, into the space where history meets wonder, where facts encounter question, where monuments touch eternity. If this brought you peace, if it sparked your curiosity, if it helped you see the pyramids as more than just piles of stone, please share it with someone else who might need that perspective. Until next time, rest well. The pyramids still stand, the stars still wheel, and the questions, those beautiful, eternal questions, continue waiting for new minds to ponder.